You are listening to the TV Obsessive podcast, brought to you by TVObsessive.com.
All right, welcome back to the TV Obsessive Podcast here today for episode 164. As always, I'm Cameron Crane, executive editor for TVObsessive.com. I'm joined by Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site. How you doing today, Ryan?
I'm doing really well. We've been watching a lot of good TV lately. I know we're going to talk about, what show we're about to cover. I, I've seen some of the best TV of my life for the past couple weeks, and I'm talking about these matches at the World Cup. I don't know how
Yeah,
tuned you have been to some of these things, but man, this is riveting television going on right now.
yeah. And you could go ahead and mention Silo. We're going to cover Silo in the latter part of the
Yes.
pod. It's always good to get that in here at the beginning. But yeah, no, I haven't watched the World Cup, and the ratings apparently have been really good too. I don't know. I wonder if they'll die down at all, given that the U.S. Mutant Ninja Turtles are out of it. Yeah, and I mean, but the ratings for that last game against Belgium were apparently really high, and that means that like 42 million people got to experience the disappointment of
Yeah. It was
yeah.
really high for the first 60 minutes of the match at least.
I mean, I couldn't bring myself to turn it off. You know what I mean? Like I was still sitting
Yeah.
here, like maybe we can pull it out, which is, I guess, I really was ultimately rooting for that team despite everything. I mean, and I feel like it's in the past enough now. We don't need to go into the whole thing with a red card, Balagon red card, whatever.
Yeah.
Just we'll just let that lie. But with it's funny with most of the other matches, we talked about this when it was getting going, right? And I said something like, "Yeah, I'm the kind of person who, where it's like I'm either going to watching two or three, or I'm going to watch like 100."
Yeah.
Um, it's been closer to the latter,
No, same
except
here.
I have had a tendency to not watch the whole games. Um, it's just on all the time. Of course, you can just like leave it on all the time. But I decided I didn't want to exactly devote my entire life to watching World Cup soccer every day, all day,
Yeah.
because you practically could. So with like every game practically, I've checked the score around halftime,
Hmm.
and then but potentially turn it on if it looked like it was going to be close.
Yep.
And if it was already like 3-0 at halftime, I was like, well, that's
Yeah.
what's the point? You know what I mean? So funnily enough, I turned on the game between Argentina and Egypt
Mm.
when I noticed that Egypt was up 2-1 in the second
Yes.
half. And I was like, oh, wow, I wonder what that would be. I did watch, I think I watched all of Argentina versus Cabo Verde because I felt like, well, come
Yes. These
um,
are two of the three matches I'm talking about, two of the best matches of the tournament.
or no, actually, I turned on the Cabo Verde one at halftime too because it was like, oh, it's close. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some really great stuff. But anyway, what I was gonna get to eventually here, and I don't know what you think of this, but I realized that we're this far into the World Cup. I think I still have not watched France. Um,
Oh, okay. You got to turn on France and Mbappe. That's probably the most talented top to bottom team.
but see, those two, what I was just describing goes together with the fact that I haven't watched France. So it's like I'm realizing how dominant France is because I haven't been compelled to turn their matches on because every time I've checked, they've had such a lead in the second half that I'm
Yeah,
like, well,
yeah,
France clearly won. Like what's the point? You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
um, but now we're coming down to the home stretch. There's how many games are there left? Nine, ten.
yeah. We are in the starting the quarterfinals tomorrow, so
Um,
only 8 teams left. Yeah, we got about
no, so less than
actually
that's
7 matches left.
less than 9 or 10. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe I'll watch the entirety of it. I'm still continuing to primarily watch the Telemundo coverage just because I don't. I
Yeah.
mean, oh my God. But particularly Mexico and England, man, they were fired up.
Yes.
There's
So
I
these are
want
the
to.
three I was going to talk about. The two recent Argentina matches and Mexico, England, all the shenanigans, the Mexicans finding the hotel and shooting off fireworks and music late into the night, the complaints about the weather and moving the time and just all this sort of game playing. And then that ends up being maybe the match of the tournament.
Yeah. And of course, I was rooting for Mexico. I don't know why exactly. Like, I swear, I feel like pretty much every British person I've known as an individual I've liked. I could, if I really struggled, I could probably think of one where I didn't, because it's like not, of course, there's got to be, so that. But
Yeah.
I've known a lot of individual people particularly from time with the new school and so on. And like some of them are, big fans of England. And when it comes
Hmm.
to the World Cup, and I remember like Simon Critchley, who I kind of even know personally, write an article for the New York Times about that. But for whatever reason, I hate their soccer team, and I don't know why, because like I only watch World Cup soccer,
Yeah.
but it's like for some reason, with apologies to my friends who are England fans, um, I don't know. I just can't. And I started thinking about to what extent this is like something in me as an American or something, So it's like individual people from England, fine, but England collectively, no,
Yeah.
man, because this goes back to the revolution. Yeah, like, yeah, no, I don't know. I've got some Scottish in my blood as well. I know that. I don't know that feeling. Anyway, so moving forward, U.S. is out of it. I'm definitely rooting against England. I like rooting for underdogs. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm landing. I'm starting to think Norway, maybe.
I
I don't
think
know yet.
I'm on Norway right now. I love Holland. I love his sort of just creeping around and never knowing where he is until he just pounces on you and destroys you. I do like Norway, especially as a big underdog right now.
Yeah, he's fun, and I also like the way the Telemundo announcers say Oscar Bob. Um, they always say his full name too. It's like when the guy gets a pass, they'll say the person's name. Usually they'll just like say their last name, but with him, they're
Yeah.
always like Oscar Bob. So it's just I don't know, it's just fun. Anyway,
Oh boy.
that's enough. Apologies to
Enough.
anyone who doesn't care. I know
World
like
Cup corner is over.
and I know too. It's like everything that you tune into at this point. It's like there's a bit about the World Cup, so it has managed to be a big deal. So I think it's successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But some sympathies, even if I don't share the sentiment, I was thinking about it like I've been watching a bit of Mike Florio does PFT,
Mhm.
and during this period he'll put out the PFT PM because like PFT live. So he's like watching on YouTube or whatever. And it's supposed to be about NFL football. And
Yeah.
and literally every day he starts out talking about the World Cup for 15 minutes. And like there's people in the comments like, Mike, what do you like? Tell me about Red and Ayuk, Anyway, and we don't talk about that whole thing. Enough sports for the moment. Um, I wanted briefly on sugar. We're 3 episodes in. I am writing on it on TVObscast.com. People want to read my recaps. But I wanted to mention it again in part because, we covered the first season on the
Mhm.
podcast. So, if regular listeners are looking for, I don't know, they're upset we're not doing it again or whatever. I recorded audio versions of my first two recaps of this season. I put them up on the YouTube.
Good. Good.
Um, but I don't know, like, if anyone wants that or cares. So I guess if anyone listening does, like, go to our YouTube, check it out. And like, in particular, if you tell me you'd like me to keep doing it, I will keep doing it. I'm kind of thinking that I'll keep doing it anyway, but at the same time, I haven't done episode 3 yet, and it's been out for a few
Yeah.
days. Um, because it's like, yeah, I don't know. I put up episode 1 and 2. They don't have very many views at this point, so I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, check out our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow that out, and if you want to listen to my thoughts on sugar, I thought I'd make that available there. So that was the primary thing I wanted to mention. Have you watched season 2 at all yet, Ryan?
I haven't checked that in yet. No.
Right on. Much as with season 1, I have mixed feelings. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
So I'm curious to see where it goes. Tony Dalton did finally show up.
I saw somebody
Uh,
noted that. Maybe it was even you.
well, my,
But
my my
that
article
that
title was like, "Hey, it's Tony Dalton."
that's what it was. Yeah.
Uh, I mean, hopefully no one feels like that was spoilers. Casting information,
Yeah.
and it was out there that he was in the season, but he doesn't show up till the third episode. And so, big fan of his acting, and curious to see where they go with that.
Hmm.
So we got that going for us. Um, speaking of which. I don't know that we'll find a point to mention this when we get to Silo, but we're going to talk about Silo later. I'll just mention it now. There are some people on the cast list for Silo season 3 we haven't seen yet either.
That is correct.
So
That is
keep an
correct.
eye on one of them. I saw on the Rich Eisen show this week. Colin Hanks was on there promoting Silo. And they said it was funny because given the nature of the show, you can understand this. But it's like you're on a press junket to promote a show. They said almost nothing about the show
No, I'm
during
sure they
during
can say nothing. Yeah.
there was like nothing that Colin Hanks could say that wouldn't be a spoiler, right? But, it was pretty entertaining though, where this is not really to Silo, but um, apparently it's become like a running thing, and it's based on something that came from Tom Hanks, I guess, originally when they were watching football together, where Tom Hanks started saying like, I wonder what like that guy would be like as a stepfather, and became this running bit. And I did find this quite entertaining. So Rich Eisen with Colin Hanks went through a series of photos of like NFL head coaches. And the question to Colin Hanks was, what would this guy be like as a stepfather based on the photo? And it was really pretty entertaining.
Okay.
Um, anyhow, also on YouTube, also to follow up with something we had on last week, the new InfoWars did drop last Thursday night. I did watch this. Um, I take it from what we were saying before we got on, Ryan, that you didn't. Is that
I
correct?
haven't caught what came out last week. No.
Just checking. Yeah, I mean, I know you watched the emergency broadcasting from back in May, as did I, and I thought that that was
Yes.
hilarious and great. So I was excited to check out what they were up to, and on top of when it premiered, and I actually was like, okay, well, I'm free. I'll go ahead and like tune in live, as it were, when it was premiering. And what they did on Thursday night was kind of a mix where they also did a good portion of it towards the beginning was this other comedic show kind of satire thing from The Onion. I think it's Jim Haggerty, maybe. I'd have to double check.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have made a note of that. So that was like about 10 minutes. And like, I mean, it was pretty funny, you know.
Yeah.
And then it went into the new InfoWars with Tim Heidecker and doing his Alex Jones impersonation. And it was funny, it was amusing. I didn't love it as much as the initial emergency broadcast. That felt more
Yeah.
inspired. So I don't know. I mean, I'm gonna try to keep watching it a bit to see where it goes. I'm at least curious, but I'm maybe not as into it as I want to be, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah.
I want to support it, but um and I know that they already know this from what I've read in terms of interviews, or I've even like listened to some interviews with Tim Heidecker and things like this. They know that this bit that they're starting with, which is like doing an Alex Jones impersonation,
Hmm.
parody of InfoWars, has a short half-life,
Yeah.
and they're planning to ultimately segue into other things. So I don't know. Maybe I'm already starting to feel like it's a little bit worn out for me. You know what I mean? But it's interesting because you realize there's such a fine line between what Alex Jones was or is. And I think he's still out there trying to do it, but it's heartening for me to see that I think his audience has collapsed.
Yeah.
There's such a fine line. I don't know if people listening ever watched InfoWars with Alec Jones. I almost hope not, but I'm the kind of sicko who couldn't help but check it out now and then. Um, with what Heidecker is doing, and he's impersonating Jones, it's it is encountering that problem where it's hard to dial it up and make it an overblown version, because the actual thing Alex Jones was doing was so absurd. So like
Yeah.
maybe they are highlighting that in a certain way, but it's hard to kind of push it further. They tried
Yeah.
though. They tried, and I mean, and it was pretty funny. Like I by
I,
no means do I regret watching it, at least.
yeah. I think satire, particularly satire as a form of impersonation or impersonation as a form of satire, is a tricky thing. This is why, you know, Dana Carvey only played George H.W. Bush a handful of times and not every week. You get to the point where you go, oh, okay, yeah, I've seen that. I know what it is. I'm accustomed to it. You want to sort of keep that freshness to it. And this is probably also competing with the idea that, reality in this case is so much more stranger and more horrific or sorry, fiction is what am I saying here? The reality of Alex Jones is more horrific than the satire can ever be, right? And so you're sort of competing against that dynamic as well.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's been a problem I've thought about over the past 10 years in a certain way. I mean, it's like being Jonathan Swift and trying to write a modest proposal in a world where there are people out there actually advocating that we kill orphans and eat them. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
like, this is supposed to be over the top in order to make a point, but it's like the reality is already anyhow.
Yeah. I'll do
Uh,
a quick I'll do just a quick plug for House of the Dragon, only because I thought this week's episode was certainly amongst the best thing that that show has ever done, and I might put it in the you know top 10% of anything that Game of Thrones has ever done as intellectual property. I thought this episode this week was incredible. My recap is up. Really
Yeah.
enjoying doing it this year. This week's episode was phenomenal. So just as a plug to keep checking it out. If you've tuned out on House of the Dragon, I think you might benefit from tuning back in.
Yeah, I do agree. It was another really strong episode. We were talking last week, it's been on my mind of maybe going back to the beginning and rewatching the whole series. And I started thinking, oh, what would be maybe a better plan would be to wait and rewatch the first three seasons right before season four.
Mm,
So that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. But at the same time, like, why? Yeah, I don't know. Because there's some part of me who's like, oh, so maybe I will start like part of me wants to start rewatching it now because I want to watch the show more now. So I
yeah.
don't know why I'm doing this to myself where I'm like, oh, but Cameron, it would be a better plan to wait. Anyway, regardless, I will say I feel like this past week's episode is one where I won't be surprised if when I do rewatch it, I appreciate it more than
Yeah.
I did when I watched it this past Sunday night because I agree it was a very good episode
Hmm.
and I understand why it was what it was. But there was very much a part of me watching and wanting to know what happens that was like a little disappointed that we didn't check in with some other stuff. You
Yep.
know what I mean?
Yep. I
So
understand that.
so it's like I understand why it is what it is, but given the dangling thread still from the second episode of the season, there's part of me like, oh, that kind of sucks we didn't check in with that. Anyhow,
Yeah, I
um,
do believe that on a binge, that episode will be stronger because it will not follow just sort of the, oh, this is the third episode in a season, but it will follow the couple of conclusions of some pretty major arcs and also sort of serves as an introduction. We don't have to get into the whole, this really should have been this premiere of the season three, but on a binge, I can see how this would be an even stronger episode because you're not sort of have the mental constraints of where it falls within a season and why is it where it is.
well, and also just kind of knowing what's going to happen, being able to take it as an episode,
Yep.
as a unit on its own, if that makes sense, um, and then think about it in conversation with some of those standout episodes like The Suitcase or Mad Men or whatever, where it's like this is one that I think will be kind of remembered as an episode. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyhow, some things in the news, I guess. Speaking of HBO, and go to this first. You sort of speaking of HBO, sort of talking about TV. I decided to put this on there because the Ali G show was a TV show. Um, but the news is that apparently a new movie is in the works from Sacha Baron Cohen. And honestly, Ryan, I really don't know how I feel about this. Thoughts?
Uh, so yes, complete, I think a purposely complete surprise. There was not a lot of, I think, run up or announcement or publicity about the fact that this is being filmed. If this had come, 3 years after Borat, we might be more excited, but we've seen a couple other things since then that's maybe not as impressive as that first entry. Allergy was never my favorite when I did watch that 20 or so years ago. So I don't know. Maybe I'm sounding like you. I'm just sort of mixed on the idea.
Yeah, I mean, to put a positive spin on it, I would like to think that this is happening because Sacha Baron Cohen is inspired
Mm,
to pursue an idea with it.
yeah.
But on the other side, yeah, I mean, taking it back to Ali G's show, I'm thinking about the films. Look, I mean, for me, actually, I haven't seen the second Borat and so on. Actually, because I kind of started to wear thin. But already for me, in my mind, I haven't revisited Dolly G show in a long time, but I
Yeah.
still tend to think of that as the best thing. And in particular, I think of the first Ali G film as the worst thing.
Okay.
Did you ever even see that?
I don't
Ali
even think
G
I've
into
seen
house.
that. I don't know what that is.
Oh, there's a movie. It was called Ali G into house, and this predates Borat, as I recall, right? If people don't even know on the original on the show, it was like those were the three main sketches. You had Ali G sketches, you had
Yeah.
Borat sketches, and you had Bruno sketches. And the mix between those and the interplay of it as like a sketch comedy show, I found quite funny. And I thought what he was doing at the time was just great. I mean, even
Yeah.
already back then, yeah, I guess it has been almost 20 years by now, if not 20 years. I was starting to think like, how does he keep getting these powerful people to agree to these interviews? Like, don't they have any idea who he is? So like, what is this film going to be? And yeah, I need more in order to make me actually interested in watching it. So if I see some
Yeah.
things or learn a bit more about what he's up to with this, maybe that'll hook me. But if it's just like he's decided to go back to the well of Ali G to make money on
Yeah.
film,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's kind of all that's going on, then mm, I'm significantly less intrigued by that. Like even that series he did, Who is America, didn't quite work for me. Like I didn't
Yeah.
love it, but I could at least see there how he was trying to do something that was at least a little bit novel.
Yeah.
So, part of me feels like the idea of going back to doing an Ali G movie it's a little disappointing. Like I'd like to see him do something else.
Well, that's
It's
what I was
like
going to say. We've seen his acting range, especially in the last 10, 15 years, with not just with Borat, but with Les Mis and with all of these different things we've seen him in. We've seen sort of this range that that Sacha Baron Cohen has given us, and you had to go back to something from a couple decades ago. Yeah, just I'm sure it'll be fine, but I'd like to see something else.
I do wonder. I do wonder. Another potential way to worry about this would be that like it's somehow gotten into his mind that he wants to push back against woke cancel
Mm,
culture or something, or I don't know. I hope that that's not the case with this guy, but
yeah,
there is a way in which, if you look back at things like Ali G and Borat in particular, I
yeah,
mean, you probably don't even have to imagine. I'm sure you could find some school out there on the internet who's like claiming that this is problematic in terms of the cultural representation or whatever. You know what I mean?
yeah. Oh, sure. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
anyhow, if it's funny, it works. Another thing I put on here, and this news came out today. The update came out today, at least. The news broke the other night. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I think I told people we're done with sports. Haha, not done with sports. On the fantasy sports, the underdog okay, so like to start at the beginning, the other night the news came out that underdog is nixing its content arm. No, so all of this stuff is canceled. But I think there's a Gilbert Arenas show I never really watched.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing that really stands out to me is Josh and Hayden's show focusing on NFL football or fantasy football, perhaps in particular. But there's a way in which some of that stuff is more about football and not necessarily even fantasy. And I know we talked about underdog stuff along these lines on here before, at least briefly, when they, for example, hired Bill Belichick a couple of years ago
Mm-hmm.
to do a show, which was unfortunately bad. But yeah, so they're getting rid of it, and then there's something there. I guess I want to avoid getting too sidetracked about, but I think I find it kind of interesting that Underdog, which is primarily like the best ball, it's basically a gambling site when it comes down to it, um, was smart enough at the beginning to say, "Oh, we should have this content on." Like I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was like really, really smart marketing because particularly with like Josh and Hayden's show, it stood up on its own as fantasy football analysis. But then now they're saying, like, we don't need that anymore. I feel like
Yeah,
this is stupid on their part. Anyway, Yahoo apparently agrees insofar as, like, very quickly, Yahoo's like, oh, we'll take it.
yeah.
So the Josh and Hayden show, at least now, is going to be on Yahoo. They have a video out today where they talk about it some more and so on and so forth. And I guess they're keeping their YouTube channel and the production staff behind the scenes. I'm sure it'll look a little different. Yahoo won't brand it, but hopefully this
Mm-hmm.
goes well in my mind because I enjoy their program. I can't help but pardon me think about when Yahoo decided to buy the show Community. But like hopefully this goes better than this. Anyway, I've been talking for a while. Thoughts on all of this, Ryan?
Yeah, so I think there's an interesting sports business aspect at play here, and why it makes sense that a show like this, and probably more, will flock to some place like Yahoo. From what I have read, because I mentioned in this, not just from the fantasy football angle of it, but just sort of something that I consume all the time is these content pieces or these content arms of these sites like an Underdog or a DraftKings or a FanDuel are not big money makers for them at all. As a matter of fact, the best ball product is are not really money makers for them in the sense that the sports books and the prediction markets and other things are. And so they're all pivoting to those products and just sort of the UI and the software that's needed to really run those aspects of their gaming. And so the content, at this point, if it's not somebody up there, making picks or recommending picks for what they should do on a call sheet or some sort of prediction market, then yeah, they're just sort of going to say, well, this doesn't, fit our model anymore. So a pure fantasy platform like Yahoo can take it over and it can do really well for them.
Yeah. I mean, I do get it from a business perspective. I still think it is um, short-sighted or
Yeah.
failing to, it's like, what's there might be a better term, but I want to say fuzzy variables. It's like there are things that you can't quite get on the spreadsheet. There are things you can't
Hmm.
quite quantify. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think one of them is Josh Haynes' YouTube channel even has a lot of subscribers. I'm sure that's not bringing in like huge amounts of money because like, YouTube doesn't even pay people a ton of money in the first place. Whatever. Anyway, put
Yeah.
that to the side. Insofar as potentially someone like me who follows that is watching stuff and then because of what they're talking about gets inspired to like to go to Underdog maybe in the first place maybe for the
Mm.
first time
Yeah.
or then later even to say oh based on this oh now I'm inspired to go do best ball draft or something like this um so I don't know we'll see how it goes I just maybe it starts to be more me thinking about branding than about TV,
Yeah.
I guess. I thought it was worth putting on here because there is that kind of aspect. It is a show, you can watch it.
Yeah. And this is
Um,
largely where sports programming is going to go. It's going to live on YouTube. It's going to live on social media. It's you'll have to find it those places. You're not going to, go your sports analysis, on your cable box much anymore. This is where you go to find at least the highest quality of it right now.
yeah, I think so. So, I mean, look, it makes sense that Yahoo would take it, and I don't know. Yahoo, again, I risk getting caught up in like the business aspect, but do you ever just feel like weirdly astonished that Yahoo continues to exist?
I think as it has these other arms like its fantasy platform. I know they have
Oh,
a
yeah.
at least they try to have a pretty robust news outlet.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, they're definitely not making money through a search engine anymore or anything like that.
Right. I mean, that's why it sticks in my mind because like there's still part of me that thinks of Yahoo as the search engine that lost to Google in the late 1990s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like the company just persists. It just persists. Like it's like perennial bronze medalist or something. It's like the Minnesota Vikings. Um, anyhow, glad to see at least that that show will continue because I do enjoy it, and in particular, I will plug it. Even watching what they'll sometimes call their flagship show, Stats versus Film, during the NFL
Hmm.
season. I think that's great because it's for me, it's just like I love this shit. I mean, like
Yeah.
because they're pulling on those stats and advanced metrics and all of that, but then putting into context by looking at the film as well. So I'm glad that that's continuing at least. Let's see. Let's hit these show announcements. We can hit them relatively quickly. The Rick and Morty spinoff coming on July 26th. I think we maybe mentioned all this before. President Curtis. As I recall, neither of us really watched Rich and Morty. Rick and
Mm-mm.
Rich and Morty. Um, Rick and Morty at this point. I did used to watch it and I just kind of fell off. I don't know. Spinoff, maybe it'll work. There's some comments about it being like the X-Files to Rick and Morty's Doctor Who. I think I'm reading that analogy the right way.
Yeah. I'm not sure how that analogy fits within Rick and Morty, but I think you've got the analogy right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if the analogy between Rick and Morty and Doctor Who lands for me, but I think I get what they're saying here, that whereas Rick and Morty will be more about like, Rick and Morty kind of traveling around at different times and places and parts of the universe,
Yeah.
that um President Curtis will be more of a case of the week kind of thing. I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway, people might want to check that out. If you're fans of Rick and Morty, Chris Sheridan's been writing on it episode to episode for TVObscast.com. You can check that out. We are sort of behind because they did this weird thing. Well, I don't know. It's maybe a debate whether we're behind or not. They did a weird thing where they were releasing it only on Adult Swim, only through like the Adult Swim
Yeah.
app. And then they started putting it out through HBO Max several weeks later. So we're ultimately covering it in line with the HBO Max release schedule, not the Adult Swim release schedule.
Yeah.
One of these little confusing things that these places do for some reason sometimes. Um, let's see. Also, we can go chronological order. I had also made a note of this, but although you were the one who put it on our sheet, technically, Ryan, Nocturne with Lee Schreiber, Stephen Graham in October. Thoughts on this one? Apple
Yeah, this will
TV?
be an interesting, I think, entry into Apple TV and their crime drama that we've talked about a few of these before. This one, I think, notable for a couple reasons. Number one, I think people are really excited to see Stephen Graham. Obviously, I think the last thing we saw him in substantially was as the father in adolescence, and that was sort of his baby. This time, I think this is here in this story, he's playing a serial killer, so I'm very interested to see that turn and how he ends up portraying a character like that. He'll be alongside Liev Schreiber, but also that this show called Nocturne got I guess, a last minute title change because Harlan Coben's Lazarus is going to come out before, and the show was called Lazarus, now called Nocturne. So I don't know, it looks kind of like a nice, dark, pulpy, I think, piece of crime drama that I'll probably check out. I think this says it's coming in October.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it looks like it'll be entertaining. It looks like it'll be
Hmm.
compelling. I don't know if it'll feel deep or anything like that, but it's a
Yeah.
kind of, crime thriller sort of thing. Really good cast here. I have to check this one out. I didn't know that bit you mentioned about the name. I'm glad they changed the name though, if for no other reason than, I feel like when we were younger, maybe I'm being wrong about this. I need to do some research, but I feel like when we were younger, it was like sort of against the rules to use the name of something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if there
Yeah.
was a TV show in the past that had this name, you wouldn't use that name. You'd at least tweak it, or same thing with films. And in the past decade or so, it seems like they just decided, yeah, screw that.
Yeah.
We're done with norms. We're done with unwritten rules across the board. Like why should we hold to this one? You know what I mean? Who cares if our film's called the exact same thing as another film that came out 20 years before it? Whatever. They
Yeah,
will
and
figure it out.
in this situation, I think that Lazarus, which is now Nocturne, was created first, but Harlan Coben's Lazarus was going to be first to market, first to air. So they just stepped aside, let them have the name, and then decided to pivot to a different name here. But yeah, the Harlan Coben apparently didn't care and thought just his name in front of it would be enough of a differentiator.
Yeah, and well, I mean, at least some differentiation is, but I get it. Like, particularly if they're coming out at the same time or whatever. I'm thinking
Yeah.
mostly, I feel what the norm I feel like has fallen away is more in relation to the fact that like there's something that's a little bit older, and but now anymore it seems like, well, we'll just go ahead and call the show Invasion. Who cares if there's like a film called Invasion or like multiple films called Invasion? It's just like, um. So that's not even the best example. I forget what the best example was. There was something where I got really confused because I was seeing people talk about it on social media, and I was like, that's not how I recall. And I was like, oh, there's a new thing with the same name. I see. Anyhow, old man yells at cloud a bit there. The Emmy nominations were all announced today. I guess that was a change of plan. Like they were going to trickle them out, or they were going to do more next week or something. They decided to announce them all in the day. If I'm getting that story right, what stood out to you here, Ryan? What do you want to talk about here?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that a lot stood out to me here. I did see, and I thought of you when I read a quick sort of reaction piece from Alan Sepinwall, and he was disappointed that the Lowdown got nothing. And I thought of you when I heard that because I know how much you enjoyed that show. But the big winners here are The Pit with 25 noms, Hacks with 24, and I think one thing we would both agree with, the best new show in terms of nominations, Widow's Bay, ended up getting 19. Matthew Rhys nominated, I think, for three different things, including two different shows, and one for being a executive producer. So it's his summer right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was hard to see that Kate O'Flynn did get nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Widow's Bay.
Yep.
That would be probably the one that I care about the most, and so insofar as I care about these things at all,
Yeah.
which I largely don't, as I think you know. I mean, like I saw someone quip earlier on Blue Sky that sometimes they'll watch up to 5 shows before they make Emmy nominations. And I feel that a little bit. It's just like these are like the 5 shows this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing for the lowdown. That's disappointing, but. I think nothing for Lord of the Flies either, which I know that some thought really deserved some nominations as well. Um, I think it was nothing. I don't know. I didn't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something hidden in there somewhere. But I know people thought
Yeah. I
that
guess
they deserved nominations for casting
the
and for some of
above
the
the line
performances.
awards got shut out of that.
Yeah, and so yeah, okay, Flynn wins, and everything else, whatever. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, like as we discussed previously, I do kind of think Widow's Bay is the best show of the year, best new show at least. I know Pluribus is also in the mix here for awards. Definitely
Yeah,
have to give
Pluribus I
Pluribus
think
what we
got
talked about.
18. Yeah, quite a few.
So I definitely won't be upset if Pluribus wins some Emmys. Um, we also covered Paradise on the podcast. I still don't really think Paradise should be winning Emmys, but whatever. It's like it's pretty good. It's an entertaining show. It's like that's part of the problem. Like, what is the standard here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, here's another thing that stood out to me. If I'm going to continue this line of complaint about genre categorizations, because of the Bears once again nominated under comedy, and it's not a comedy. I noticed that The Night of the Seven Kingdoms is nominated under drama, and it is a comedy. So, I just can't win for losing on this, I
Yeah, I
guess.
know. I was going to shout out Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Got a nomination. Lead actor, which I should have pulled up for him for Wonder Man. Marvel's Wonder Man got a nomination for comedy series, which I very much enjoyed that show. Definitely a departure from its normal Marvel television. So glad that those got at least a little bit of notification. Also was baffled, I mean, really baffled by the choice that Your Friends and Neighbors on Apple TV got a nomination for Best Drama. That show is not a drama. It is much more comedy, and this season was not good. So, to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, this is what I mean. It's just I don't know. I like anyway. Let's just say I know what this risking like what a tangent about behind the scenes politics or the machinations and how the whole things work and who gets in the mix, and it's almost like you have to lobby or whatever. Whereas I probably have more respect for some of the other things out there in terms of awards, but I don't know all the details there either. I'm not a big awards guy,
Yeah, yeah,
but like to me, the idea of say, a bunch of television critics getting together and saying like, "Oh, these are the shows that we think are the best television." Yeah, I can get behind, but I don't feel like the Emmys is that in particular. And
yeah,
what
yeah.
exactly is it then? Um, but it's definitely the big prestigious award. I do hope that Kate O'Flynn wins, and then
Hmm.
she and Jeff Hiller can like toast Emmys when they're filming season 2 of Widow's Bay. Um, that would be well deserved. But all right, well, let's get to Silo. We're up to the
Yes,
second
sir.
episode of season 3, entitled "It's All Good." Spoilers will be on the table here for everything through this episode of Silo, the TV series. No spoilers from the books here is our promise. I haven't read them. Ryan's read a little bit, but he hasn't read all of them yet. So whatever. If Ryan knows anything that we're not supposed to know, he's not allowed to tell us. Anyway, we'll put a little bit of music in here and be back with you in about 10 seconds.
Okay, we're here to talk about Silo on Apple TV, Season 3, Episode 2, titled It's All Good. This episode written by Shelley Burse, directed by Michael Dinner. As Daniel tries to help Charlotte get her memory back, he learns from her doctor that she is on medication that keeps her memory suppressed. They'll bring it back over time. Even though there's a chance it won't work, the doctor's confident she will regain her memory. Helen runs into Daniel and learns where his sister is being treated, so she goes to see her, disguising herself as one of Daniel's staffers. Helen tries to get Charlotte to remember that they were working on a story together before her mission in Iran. The doctors get Helen away from her, call for Daniel. Helen tells them they were working on uncovering some massive cover-ups from the government, including the fact that the Dirty Bomb in D.C. might have been a fake. In Silo 18, Camille learns about the note that Juliet received last episode, and the algorithm tells Camille to be patient in their treatment of her memory loss because Juliet is an outlier. Juliet leaves her apartment with her security officer in tow. She goes to the construction site of the stairs and runs into Knox, who tells her where to find Martha and also gives her the name Lucas Kyle to start investigating. Juliet meets with Martha, and Martha encourages her to try harder to remember everything because they all need the fighter that she once was. And later, Juliet is able to break free from her security and visit with Sandy, Kennedy, and Danny, who are all fugitives in hiding. They tell her about their helmet that they found with number 17 on it and how that's different from the normal helmets. And Danny thinks that she might be getting the memory loss pills that he was once promised. Camille tracks down Juliet. Juliet agrees to stay in line from now on, but later that night, she spits out her pills the nurse gives her, goes up to the cafeteria to look at the view outside. Meanwhile, Camille learns from the algorithm that there's a tipping point where Juliet being back might cause too much of a problem and might destabilize the silo. We have what we suspected last week, sort of some competing memory loss storylines happening here. So we know
Yeah.
we've got the different point in time storylines, but these are now very clearly memory loss storylines that are in, I wouldn't say in competition to one another. Maybe we find out that they will be relevant to one another at some point, but just sort of interesting how you are dealing with well, we've got people in both timelines that are causing memory loss, people dealing with memory loss. Is this working so far?
Well, in what way, right? So, I mean, in terms of the plot and so on, I read there's a pretty direct connection. I don't know. Do you feel like there's any ambiguity there? In other words, like,
Yeah, I think this episode was clear to us to tell us that we are dealing with the same thing here somehow, at some point in the future, or some point in the past, but we're now dealing with very, very similar circumstances.
yeah, like so the treatment that Dr. Cernovich is giving to Charlotte and the drugs and all of that is now being used within the silo. That was the connection that I drew. And there's some things I want to talk about there in terms of the ethics of what Dr. Cernovich is doing. But to start with your question, I don't know. I mean, so look, first of all, I do want to say, like, I'm enjoying this season so far, and I'm definitely in to as great of as an extent as I ever have been in terms of feeling invested in what's going on in Silo. Um, but much as with season one at times and with season two at times, I started to feel some worry that
Mm.
like, and I'm trying not to because I know at this point how the pacing of this show goes.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So I do not expect either of these storylines to resolve
yeah.
until season three, episode 10.
Interesting. Okay.
But I hope I'm wrong. And the worry I have is that there's not enough meat on the bone, as it were, to
Yeah.
to extend it out that long. I don't know.
I,
Any
I've
thoughts?
I've found myself, I don't know. I found myself more frustrated perhaps with the Juliet memory loss storyline, which again, I thought this was a really good episode in terms of there was a lot of exposition, there's a lot of reintroduction of characters, a lot of getting to communicate with people we haven't communicated with in a couple of years. But the Juliet one, it's like all these things keep coming back to her. All these people keep telling her um, about things that she did, places she was, things she experienced. And also, if Camille and her security are trying to keep a lock on all those things, or trying to keep sort of Juliet under their thumb, like they're really doing a terrible job of it so far. Like really not just doing a good job of and I know that Camille's having these conversations with the algorithm, but it just seems like very lax in terms of the mission that they're trying to accomplish with Juliet at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess here's what I get about that, right? Like, the idea, the plan is that you want to keep Juliet happy, you want her to be this figurehead mayor, um, want her to believe the lies that you're trying to implant in her, and so on. And, to be more, what's the right word? To treat her like more of a prisoner
Hmm.
explicitly. Well, like, there's obviously a risk of undermining the whole plan there, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna treat her functionally kind of like a prisoner, but if she actually feels like she is a prisoner and isn't going along, well, now we're pushing in the direction of having the problem that the algorithm's worried about with Juliet in a meaningful way. So I sort of get that, but it's interesting how her guard or chaperone guy, Deputy Jerry, in this episode, he kind of flips, you know what I mean? Like, I feel
Yeah.
for the guy. He's been tasked with this, and at first he's like, "Ooh, you can't do this and all that," but then by the end, he's like, "Look, no, you're my mayor. If you need to sneak off and have some alone time, let me know or whatever." And it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, okay, is Jerry, because from his perspective, I got his initial position, even of how it might put himself at risk, but so now is he somehow come around to saying he will take that risk? Curious about that. I mean, I guess so, because in order for the narrative to really move forward, Juliet's going to have some degree of a freedom of movement and things like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It seems like Jerry, she says his name is Jerry, Deputy Jerry, or security guard Jerry, whatever his name is. And I didn't note the name of the girl who got the tattoo that matches Juliet. So she has a
Oh, I think it
conversation
was
with
I think it was Evelyn.
Evelyn.
I could
Okay.
check my notes to be sure, but
Yeah.
off the top of my head, I think that was it. You think she's going to be important?
Well, I just think that they're representative of there are a lot of people that are very eager to believe in Juliet for what she can do, what she has accomplished, what she may know. And so these people represent, we obviously know about Martha and Knox and Sandy and Danny and Kennedy, but it seems like they're building a coalition for her of people that want to believe in her and want her to lead. Um, and so there's just sort of that keeps growing each episode.
Yeah. You know what? Now you made me think about her again. I bet that Evelyn is going to be important. I bet that young woman is going to be important.
I think she
And
might be. Yeah.
and I did not write about her in my recap on this week's episode. But whenever, I'll circle back around when she becomes important later. I'm like, oh, you remember her,
Remember
So
her? Yep.
podcast is good for this sort of thing, to make me maybe realize that she probably will be more important than I was thinking, because like to this point, I feel like she hasn't really done anything all that noteworthy,
Yeah.
So she's kind of a fangirl sort of thing. She comes across, I think, as a little bit annoying, I think even to Juliet.
Yeah.
So, there's also a way in which that could lead in the direction of that relationship flipping or something. You know what I mean? Like it could lead in the direction of her and her friends ultimately feeling betrayed by Juliet, and flipping from that kind of loyalty to hatred or something. And
Yeah.
she probably will matter. She's been the first couple episodes.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I'm curious in terms of relatively minor characters mattering. This one I am on top of. Orla from Supply was not in episode 2. She was in episode 1. We were introduced to her in episode 1. Orla, right? She's now the Shadow in Supply. She's going to be taking over. And the last
Yes.
we saw of her, she was talking to a guy who I take it is her boyfriend or husband, or I don't know. I don't know the guy's name even. Not sure if he's been named as a character. Um, Talking about two things. One is the vitamin D shipment that's going to take several days.
Hmm.
And the other is she says something like, this is back in episode 1, but I don't think we talked about it last week. She says something like, I think I figured out how, quote, she is doing it, something like that. And she's going to look into it. She's like, I'll let you know what I find later or whatever. which I'm connecting up to what she said to Juliet in the uh, season 3 premiere about things going missing from critical supply or whatever, like
Yeah.
stuff that's been there from the very beginning of the silo, some's going missing or whatever. I think that's what she's looking into. And I'm mentioning all this, reminding people of all of this, because here in episode 2, what we do get is apparently she's missing. Thoughts about Orla?
Yeah, so I that storyline of her missing. So this is we're now we've got Paul involved here. We've got her missing, and we see at the end of this episode, obviously, this vitamin D crate or barrel that's being moved up the. Yeah, there are things working. There are things working behind the scenes, sort of at the behest of who? Is it the behest of Charlotte? I mean, not Charlotte, at the behest of Camille, at the behest of the algorithm. How are these things being manipulated? But Orla, yeah, I guess I'm just trying to place what role she has in this whole scheme that's being put together.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I think there are two separate things here. And I was kind of running them together in my mind a little bit. I went and rewatched that scene from episode 1 of the season, because in that scene she does mention the quote unquote vitamin D shipment. And I'll say about more about that presently and how I'm interpreting that. But then the other thing seems to
Yeah,
be something else. And it's that second thing that I'm connecting to the fact that she's missing, because I think it's clear if you rewatch that scene, she's not involved in the vitamin D shipment other than like
yeah,
signing off on making it happen or something like that. So why has she gone missing? I think that has to connect with who's been stealing stuff from supply.
hmm,
Yeah, who is she? She refers to as she, but I don't think we know who it is.
yeah, yeah,
And that's one question I wanted to kind of tag here. And I don't know, maybe that relates to Lucas Kyle in some way, wherever he is. I mean, of course, that'd be the wrong pronoun for Lucas Kyle, I think. Um, but who knows what's happened in the past 90 days? Anyway, and I'm struggling to put a finger on who else it could be. I mean, Martha, of course, but
yeah.
maybe anyway. Um, and then the other thing, but okay, first, so before we move to the vitamin D shipment, any further thoughts on that stuff in terms of who's stealing stuff from supply?
Now, it just seems to be that there are several factions. There's obviously the Camille and whoever's working with her. There is Martha Knox and who sort of falls under that Shirley that group. There is the fugitive group. There is sort of curious where Sheriff Billings and his wife land. So yeah, it's just kind of they're setting up these pocket algorithm side, and then there is a we want to know more. We think that we should have more these different groups, and so yeah, just sort of I think they're positioning so that we don't know exactly where all these things are coming from or where the schemes are being initiated at this point.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I just found myself wondering, like, is there someone I'm not thinking of? Is there some other woman in the silo I'm somehow forgetting? Is there someone who would do something like kidnap Orla or kill her or something like
Yeah,
that? And no one's coming to mind from, like, because if she was referring to Martha, I don't like Martha wouldn't hurt her. I'm confident in that based on what
yeah,
we know about
yeah.
Martha. Is there someone else I'm sort of forgetting about? I don't know. I'm curious to see where that goes. On the
Yeah,
other
me
thing,
too.
on the other thing, I think it's pretty clear that the quote unquote vitamin D is memory suppressing drugs are going to put in the water supply. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there ambiguity here? This is something we said we are going to talk through a bit more in another way as
Yeah.
well. What are your thoughts here, Ryan?
This is the worst kept secret. Yes, the vitamin D is something that's going to go in the water that's going to, or well, yeah. So I guess the question is going to or could be something that will suppress memory throughout the silo.
Yeah, it seemed like this was maybe from talking briefly before we started recording what we might not be entirely on the same page on. Maybe we are, but we agreed to talk it through on the air, as it were, because right towards the end of the episode, maybe it's even the very end of the episode. Yeah, I don't know what I think of this either. These scenes with the algorithm talking to Camille they almost feel a little bit too on the nose for me, spelling things out. But at the same time, I think it's important to bear in mind, I know algorithm could be lying. It could be lying. You know what I mean? Um,
I think that's true. I absolutely think that's true.
but so this is where it ends up saying, oh, well, look at this chart. There are these two lines, and if they intersect, Juliet will have outlived her usefulness. But of course, if we just like killed her or took her out or whatever, that could also be catastrophic. So that would be bad. Um,
All right, so here's my impression of that scene, or what I think I heard, or what I think I believe that the algorithm is referencing in that moment. So it's showing Camille that there is a tipping point of the silo being content that she is there, and being happy about her presence and her being back. But there also comes a point where I guess there's a sense diminishing returns where that wouldn't matter as much as the risk that her presence causes. And so if there's a problem with her being there, then there gets a point where they need to, I don't know if it's eliminate her, put her under, completely wipe her memory, whatever it is. But if Juliet is not there, that event would destabilize the silo. And my take on it was, if that happens, if they have to eliminate Juliet, or if they have to remove her from the equation, that's when they would wipe the memory of everyone in the silo using this vitamin D. That there's a contingency plan in place, but they're not putting it into action yet. I don't know if that's how you read that scene.
no, yeah. So this is where we're interpreting it differently because how I read the scene was that the plan is already in motion to put the memory suppressing drugs into the water supply. And that the algorithm was saying that it hopes that that happens before they get to some kind of crisis point with
Hmm.
Julia, right? Where and what I wondered is, I mean, there are indications that they did this before, 140 years ago or whatever. That's another thing in here. Like, I guess it's pretty well confirmed at this point that the before time stuff is like 350 years ago or more, a little more.
Yeah.
But and like again, unless the algorithm's lying, and then there was the guy from the mines too. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it gets a little bit. This show sometimes pushes me in this direction, and I don't know what to do about it because I feel like with the mine stuff, I'm starting to get close to like, well, maybe God made the Earth with the dinosaur fossils there. You ever think of that? You know, and, um, which I wouldn't mind all in the real world, you know. But
Yeah.
anyway, sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent. Focusing on that, focusing on that last scene, I thought what the algorithm was saying was we're already doing this,
Okay.
and we just hope that things don't come to a head with Juliet before that happens. Now, that still leaves me with the question of, well, what exactly does that look like? Is it a lower level amount, and when like would a lower level amount because I don't know if it would make sense to me just like completely wipe the memories of everyone in the silo. You know what I mean? But would a lower level amount just kind of like make everyone's memories, fuzzy or something like that? Like they'd still kind of remember each other and who they are, but everything would just be a little bit nebulous or something. That feels like it would be more in line with what the plan is here in terms of putting the stuff in the water supply. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is more of a break glass in case of emergency thing. But it read to me like they're already doing it. So
Yeah, so I see that. So that makes sense to me. The idea that we can already see that Juliet is causing a problem just by the fact of her being an outlier and her remembering certain things, and so we're going to take the step to, in some capacity, suppress people's memory or wipe their memory. Let's do the Men in Black sit thing where we set the time and date and hold them, and that's how we manipulate their brains at this point. So we're going to do it. We've got a nuclear option that we're not going to use yet, but we're going to do this in hopes that they forget about what Juliet did, and everybody's memory sort of goes back to, okay, we don't need to focus on her as this savior or as this redeemer or as this hero that went out and came back after she went to clean. So yeah, they could certainly be doing it already, which is why the shipment is moving up the silo.
yeah. curious to see what happens there. Some of the other stuff, man, this is probably a good time to work in. The algorithm says something about like 6 silos being reset. This one was reset 140 years ago. Probably worth noting that again, I can't fully get over the fact that part of me has been playing with this idea. Maybe it hasn't really been that long, and maybe I do have to give that up by the end of this season because all indications are it has been that long. But uh, we'll see. But let's go from that um, to the before times, which I guess that's the lingo that the kids are using. I don't know if that's in the
Yeah.
books or what, but that's people on the internets are calling it the before times. So I've decided to just follow that.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's more a social media creation.
More of a social media creation. Yeah, fair enough. Um, but what we get here is Daniel discovering that his sister Charlotte's memory loss isn't just accidental. It's not a direct cause of whatever happened in Iran, even. It is a part of the treatment that this guy, Dr. Victor Cernovich, right? And there's no vowel after the C at the beginning of his name. I had to like triple check that when I was starting my recap. Um, Dr. Cernovich, another actor who you surely recognize from somewhere, is Matt Craven, I think his name.
Hmm.
Um, but he apparently, and they don't spell this out in quite as explicit of detail, but this is what I gather. And you tell me if you disagree at all with how I'm interpreting this. That he's been working on a treatment for trauma, where the idea is we give you this drug that pretty much wipes your memory. You don't even really remember who you are. You don't remember who other people are, all this kind of stuff, like what we're seeing with Charlotte, right? But it's not actually fully erasing things. Like there's still kind of stuff there in your subconscious, whatever you want to call it. But so the second part of the treatment is to bring that back, as it were, by you being told stories about your own life. And insofar as they're true, they're going to like ping on those residual structures of memory that are still there. So, at least as he puts it to Daniel, it's like, okay, it is, you are going to remember, quote unquote, for real. I might question that metaphysically, but we're not going to bring back the trauma, right? Is that how you read the idea here?
Yeah, I think that's how I read it. So that there's something that Charlotte and others have gone through. They think it would be best if they suppress everything, and then in this drawbridge analogy, only bring certain things back across the drawbridge, leaving the trauma, the disturbing things. Yeah, and then we sort of have to leave, the idea of what else are they leaving behind, or are they not choosing to bring across when they bring stuff back? Even I think Daniel brings up the question of could we lie to them when we recover these memories? So I think you've got the nail on the head. Yeah, the question remains of what are they actually doing when they develop this kind of brain manipulation technology?
Yeah, so I kind of want to separate it out in terms of two questions because you're right. Well, could they lie? And he goes, oh, I guess you could. Like, as always, some kind of moron or idiot who's like, oh, I never thought about that before. Wow, I guess you could, but it'd be hard. Um, and also the fact that the government is implicated in some ways, and the Iran mission was secret, and there's all sorts of reasons to be suspicious along those lines. But even if we were to put all of that aside, what do you think of the very idea of the treatment? Because my initial reaction was a moral or ethical objection to the idea of the treatment, even just on the face of it in terms of if he's, completely in good faith telling the truth about. But I did have to think about it more, as a treatment for PTSD and so on. And,
Mm,
maybe the things in my life that come to mind wouldn't hit the level of that sort of trauma. And there are some kind of indications when Charlotte starts freaking out where, would she even be able to live and function in light of this, or the difficulty of that kind of working through the difficulty people do face with PTSD. Um,
yeah.
But I don't know. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
curious,
think,
what do you think on that
yeah,
level?
my first thought was absolutely object to this kind of treatment, especially if it's treatment being administered to someone that is unaware that it is happening, right? So there's not really
Yeah.
any say that this person has, obviously. And even as you said, if this person is acting in 100% good faith, if it's someone that you trust, this someone that you believe is has the best interest in mind of the person they're administering this treatment to, what other things could happen or what other incentives could introduce themselves to make it not be the case in just a moment's notice or in with the just sort of the slightest things changing? Or how do you know that you will always be aligned as the family or friends that want certain things to come back, but the doctor doesn't believe that they should come back? Well, this contributed to trauma, or this, is attached to the trauma. So there's just going to be these real ethical issues about how this works and who is right in terms of administering this stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like, there's also a question here that goes to the level of personal identity, and that's,
Hmm.
in some ways, I found this to be like the most interesting part of the episode, at least philosophically, at least, is
Yeah.
pinging on that part of my brain, because there's a way in which Dr. Sinovich is recognizing that, where he's basically giving Daniel the line that we are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves.
Um,
Okay, well, now if you're taking some of those stories away, well, am I still me? He's like, okay, like, all right, you're only getting rid of the really bad stuff. So maybe I'm happier, but how do we weigh that against, as you said, in particular, insofar as I think this is being done without Charlotte's consent,
yeah.
there might still be a question of whether it's okay, even if you did have that kind of consent, but in particular, without it, yeah, I still find myself landing on that sort of conclusion about it, even even if they were only doing what Dr. Cernovich said they were doing, right? Which is someone has this traumatic event
Hmm.
and severe PTSD. And so the idea is to erase the trauma, but in order to erase the trauma, we have to erase everything. No, not erase quite, but however they think this works, we're going to make you forget everything, and we're going to bring some back, but not the bad part. I don't know how I feel about that, honestly. And then, even if you were willing to swallow that, which apparently in the world we're watching on Silo, the TV program, people are, at least to a sufficient extent for it to continue and then become a part of what's at the disposal of people in the silo in the future, where there is clearly being used for purposes that we would want to say are unethical, nefarious, what have you. I think, you know what I mean? Or I'm curious to see if the show ends up giving us more to work with in terms of a potential kind of consequentialist arguments there, right? Like, what is the justification for the silos? Or what do they think justifies the silos?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not just the existence of the silos, but all the stuff we've seen within the silos in
Yeah.
terms of deceiving people or whatever else. They can't know about the other silos and all of that kind of stuff. And we talked about this last week. I did go back and double check from the season 2 finale what Bernard says to Juliet, and I rewatched that scene. Um, he says that he knows who, but he doesn't know why, and he doesn't care at that point, because he's just discovered about the safeguard and all that kind of stuff. Like he's at that
Yeah.
point landed on saying, "Look, I know who. I don't care why."
Yeah.
Which kind of stood out to me because I've been thinking about the question I was just saying before. That is a big question I want an answer to. But
Yeah.
it's clear that in Bernard's mind, at least in that moment, whatever attempted justification the Who would make, like he doesn't care. Screw you.
Yeah.
No, there is no
I
justification.
I think I think, and maybe I should even say that I predict that we will get an answer to both of those questions this season, both the who and the why. And then my, again, uninformed prediction for season 4 will be question of what do you do once you have that knowledge. Again, that's without having read completely to the end of this, but I think based on what I have seen, what I have heard, what I have consumed, I think we will know who and why this season. I'll be very curious to see how they unroll that, but that's my prediction at least.
Yeah, I would share that prediction. I do wonder if we're going to get as detailed of an answer to the why in particular as I want.
Mm,
Hopefully we do by the time the whole series is over, at least, because I found myself thinking back to some of the stuff where I'm like, did we get a sufficient answer to why they do the cleaning? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think we
yeah,
did. You know
yeah.
what I mean? It's like I'm not going to forget Silo. I still want to understand why they set up people have to clean. Because you could kill them in other ways. You know what I mean? So that lingers to me as a question of like, is it just on the face of it like, oh yeah, we actually do want people to clean the window every once in a while?
Yeah,
But the problem is if you do need the window to be cleaned from the outside every now and then that would require that every now and then someone's going to be, executed. So yeah, I want more on that still. I don't know, but I think in the broad strokes, yeah, and that's where to go back to what I said before. I don't think it's going to be till the end of the season. I'm more worried about, and there's probably enough there in the before time storyline to slowly work towards it and, get there in the end of the season. I'm a little bit more worried about whether there's enough in the um, plot in Silo 18 to drag it out for the whole rest of the season, which I think they're going to do. It feels to me like things should come to a head more quickly.
yeah.
So,
I
if it, go
I
ahead.
feel like again with what knowledge I have, having read books 1 and 2, but not 3, and we discussed last week how I am unaware if this storyline in Silo 18 is a part of a future story or just a creation to have something go along with the timeline that we are currently in with Daniel and his situation. Yeah, it is tough to try and predict what is going to happen there, and is there enough there for us to be satisfied with it all. I feel that the Daniels storyline and that part of the season is going to become pretty propulsive pretty fast, unless I'm just completely off base of how they are going to choose to line up these seasons. And I think there's a lot of things coming there.
Yeah. So maybe that'll take over more. Maybe it'll take over more like time wise even, and maybe that'll
Yeah,
be okay. But yeah, I mean you put your finger right on my worry, and I haven't read the books at all. But there is part of me from what I understand about it that my fear is they just created this whole storyline in the silo for this season so that Rebecca Ferguson and others could still be in the show,
yeah,
and that it's just going to be a matter of creating a really protracted kind of loop that closes itself so that by the end of the season they could be back in line with the books or something like that, if that makes sense. So like,
yes,
yeah, like I hope that that's not quite how it is. I hope it feels like it justifies itself. I am I'm entertained by it enough so far. It just
yeah,
feels like it should be coming to a head by the middle of the season, and then I'm afraid they're going to drag it out for the whole season, and probably they will. And just take that as a warning, given how the show's generally paced. It'll probably go the whole season
yeah. I
before
think I
that
think I
resolves.
share that I share that concern and share that not worry, but thought that we will end up more compelled by, interested in one of the timelines over the other.
Yeah, well, I mean, like if it's entertaining enough, no big deal. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah,
if they're dragging it out over the course of the whole season, but that feels okay and feels like there's enough there for them to work with, and we're entertained enough throughout those parts of the show, then good. Then they've done their job well. Just a little bit of a worry in the back of my mind. Let's see, a couple of things to be sure to hit on before we wrap up. You mentioned in your summary, but we didn't go further about the outsiders and the meeting with Kennedy. I guess I just wanted to note that it did stand out to me how they feel closer to the actual truth of things than I might have thought. They're not just wholly misguided and thinking that it's safe outside, although they still think maybe it is. They broke into IT to get the helmet to compare it with the helmet that Juliet had on, and they've noted the 18 and the 17, and they seem really close to the thought that there are other silos.
Yes.
Um, and Kennedy's put together that they've been giving the memory suppressing drugs to Juliet. And I don't know. I mean, I'm heartened by that at least a little bit, that they're not actually still thinking, oh, well, it must be safe outside. Oh, and the fact that the writing on Juliet's sign was not her handwriting, right? So it feels like they're really close to the inference that there is another silo and are not just going to idiotically run out to their deaths through another rebellion. So we've got that going for us.
Yeah, I'm curious when that layer of memory or that sort of spark comes. She clearly has caught these little glimpses of Martha, glimpses of Bernard, a glimpse of Solo or something in that silo that leads her to trying to explain it or trying to put these pieces together now that they have a helmet with a number 17 on it.
Yeah. I feel like the plan, the way it needs to go is Juliet needs to ultimately get the help of these people and probably also Lucas and maybe whoever was involved with Orla's disappearance or whatever. I don't know. But you're going to need the help of some of these people to enact the plan, which should be to kind of covertly disable the safeguard, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That should be their ultimate plan. I mean, I guess she has to remember that that's the thing that she needs to do, but she knew that was the thing she wanted to do when she came back at the end of season two. Rewatch that scene with Bernard, and when they're talking, like Bernard's ready to kill himself because he just learned about the safeguard. Juliet's like, "I figured out how to turn it off, Bernard." It's really almost that straightforward. Um, let's see, what was the other thing? We're jumping back and forth a little bit. Oh, we didn't really talk about Helen sufficiently, I think, in the Before Time storyline. Um, her line about, questioning whether the dirty bomb in DC even actually happened stands out. Charlotte contacted her because of worries about the whole Iran mission and all of that. I don't know. Further thoughts on this front?
Yeah, I mean, it does go all the way back to that last scene we saw in season two. We see a magazine cover. I think the title of that magazine cover is this the new normal? With, someone in a hazmat suit. So, I mean, there's sort of this prevalent idea, this popular idea that and probably witnessed idea that this thing happened. And so if people witnessed something taking place, and it didn't actually happen or didn't come from Iran, well, then yeah, we're in the midst of some kind of huge potential cover up. If someone else did that, maybe it's our own government did that. Again, I don't know any of these things. This is not into spoiler territory, but whatever they're trying to uncover seems massive. But that's the implication that they didn't. If all of this has been about retaliation for some event, but that event didn't happen, I'd be very curious to see where Helen and Charlotte take this.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's the thing though. You would think though that there must be witnesses to this, people who experienced this,
Yeah.
if it did happen. So we're like, is there also a meaningful lack of such firsthand accounts or something like that that's feeding into Helen's question in the background? I wonder if we'll find out more about that,
Well, I think that there's no doubt about the fact that it did happen, but maybe who was the cause of this thing that happened, right? It's
Maybe
it's
that.
easy to blame Iran for it, but is that the truth?
You know what, Ryan? Maybe they just set off 850,000 fireworks for the 4th of July during a heat wave.
Could be.
You know, maybe I know that sounds implausible and no one would ever do that, but there's no dirty bomb. The air's unbreathable. Blame Iran. Anyway, sorry. Uh, you noted something about objects from the past and being part of Cernovich's treatment. I think that is worth noting. Maybe that does relate to the Pez dispenser. I mean, certainly you could make a broader connection between the whole thing about banning relics within the silo. If they've done this to people, then you know, relics that might, kind of ping you to remember things. They would want to get rid of those. Why that would extend more broadly to history. There's this element too that we shouldn't forget as a question. We know there are other silos. We don't know what happened in all of them. We kind of know what happened in silo 17, but some of the stuff in silo 18, I'm not sure would have held in others. Like the stuff about erasing their own history and all of that. Arguably that would be maybe that's something you would only do after there has been what the algorithm calls a reset.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And if there are, for some reason, 51 silos, I think that was the number we got mentioned in season 2. Um, if we believe the algorithm and saying that 6 of them have been reset, well, then and that includes silo 18. And then there's silo 17, where they had a successful rebellion and everyone died. So that takes us to 7, right? But then what happened in the other 44?
Yeah, yeah.
Are they on the original plan, or are they all dead too? You know what I mean? So lots of questions here. All right. Anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up here today?
No, I think that is about does it for me.
All right, sounds good. We will be back next week talking about Silo Season 3, Episode 3. Hopefully you'll join us. And hopefully you've enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do leave a good rating and review wherever you're listening. If you're on YouTube, do hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Greatly appreciate it. Be sure to check out TVObscast.com. Got written work on all sorts of TV shows there. Ryan's currently writing on House of the Dragon. I'm writing on Silo this season if you want to read my recaps. And there's other stuff going on too. We're on top of Cape Fear. And I'm writing on Sugar. And there's other stuff. Go check out the site. If you want to follow us on social media, search for TV Obsessive and you should find us. And as for the podcast, we'll be back with you next week.
Yes, we will. We will see you then.